So, friends, I'm going to begin the talk with the video. It's entitled "The Elders Speak." It is from a Swedish TV series about the American Indian spokesman and adepts. So there are Swedish subtitles on the film, so just ignore those. So if we're ready to roll, we can watch.
And we've been doing our best to continue that, and here I stand today as a member of the council that he set up so long ago with the same principles, the same mandates, but certainly in a different time and a different place. No less and probably more responsibility. And we look about for allies, we look about for friends, we look about for people who will understand and agree with those mandates of peace. And that is what we're talking about today, because that is the mandates for life. One of the other instructions that we were given is that we are now placing in your hands all life. And it is your responsibility and it is your duty to look after all life. And so when he was speaking like that, he wasn't talking about our aunts and our uncles and our cousins and our fathers and our mothers. He was talking about all life. He was talking about the trees. He was talking about the fish, the animals, everything that grows, everything with life, because it is a family. We are a family, all life. Our brothers and our sisters to the west of us, called the Lakota people, have a way of finishing their prayer, their thanksgiving, and they say, all my relations. And when they say all my relations, that is precisely what they're talking about. They're talking about all life. When we traveled and we talked with the Aboriginal people from Australia, they talked about the two laws. And when we questioned them about the two laws, they were talking about all life.
We give thanks for all of these every time we meet together, no matter how many or how few the Thanksgiving address is given. It's an acknowledgement of the rest of living things in the creation, and it's a thanksgiving and our way of paying great respect for all of the rest of the creation, which we are only a part of this great big design for living. And if any one of the other components were to fall out from that cycle, there would be a great imbalance, and eventually it would collapse. It would be gone. We, as mankind, are the only ones who do not give to the rest of the cycle. For the rest of the cycle is constantly giving and giving and giving. And we are constantly taking and taking and taking so that we might have life.
But even for American Indians, materialism and power has been very tempting lately.
They're human beings. I mean, everybody's a human being. I mean, I look around and I see this pell-mell run for gaming, gambling, high-stakes casino. Indians got gold fever, just like the white man. So that's what I look at it and I say it's the same thing as the white man. We used to laugh at him because he was so crazy when it came to gold. Now we look at our own people and they're running around with the same look in their eye. And I'll tell you, it's not so funny anymore. Peace is it's an everyday fight. It's something that goes on all the time. You know, we believe that ourselves are one half the negative, one half the positive, and it's the balance that's important all the time, to keep the balance.
So friends, we'll be picking up on some of those points and themes that were brought up in the video. But I'd like to begin with just a few contemporary quotes, just to put us in the right frame of mind. And the answer is in nature. All living beings result from and are sustained by the process of affinity and cooperation in nature. Life is nature's greatest invention. And those last two quotes were actually from Albert Einstein. So I'll begin with the definition of the word nature. It is derived from the Latin, of course, which means essential qualities, innate disposition. In ancient times, it literally meant birth. It also has the connotation of the way things happen, of ever becoming or evolution. It refers to the collective phenomena of the physical world, including minerals, plants, animals, human beings, the landscape, and other features and products of the earth. But in its wider sense, and certainly in the esoteric sense, nature comprises both the visible and the invisible universe, the physical and the metaphysical. In Sanskrit, it is known as Prakriti, nature in general, which also means matter and all of its qualities, substance, as opposed to Purusha, which is the principle of spirit, the spiritual nature. And together they form the two primeval aspects of the one unknown deity. So spirit and matter are coeval, and they work in combination, and nothing can really exist without the two working together. Spirit brings the noumena, the guiding intelligence, and the powers of creation and of nature, and nature provides the raw materials, the matter, the substance, and the energy. For most of human history, nature was believed to be a divine reflection, an aspect of the It, capital I, the infinite, omnipresent deity, which is present in every atom. This is the religion of pantheism, a word which was formed from the Greek word pan, who was the god of nature. Pan, all on its own, in Greek means all. But there have been many gods and goddesses associated with nature. And interestingly, the nature god Pan was always depicted as a half man, half goat, with horns and cloven feet, like a goat. And this image was actually co-opted and corrupted by the later Christian church, and adopted as the symbol of the devil, which, of course, originally he was certainly not. Among the many gods and goddesses associated with nature was principally Isis, the goddess Virgin Mother, personified nature. Of course, Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, but also of fertility and harmony and prosperity. And every religion, every culture had their equivalent to Venus. She was known as Aphrodite, Ishtar, Astarte. And there was also Gaia. She was the female aspect of the Hellenic primordial trinity of Uranus, Gaia, and Eros. Uranus designated heaven, or the waters of space, or the astral plane. Gaia, the primordial matter, or Prakriti. And Eros, being the personified procreative force in nature in its abstract sense. And there are many trinities, obviously, in the different traditions, but this was the Hellenic or Greek, ancient Greek one. And esoterically, mythology portrays Eros as the god of lust and animal desire, which is obviously the lower aspect of this particular god. As Mother Nature, or the modern concept of Gaia, she supplies everything necessary for life freely to all creatures. Gaia is the poetical form of the Greek word geo, meaning land or earth. And from that root we get the words geology, geography, and so on, anything science connected with the earth, with the land. And Gaia is also the personification of the earth, and more widely, the ancestral mother of all life. So, for this abundance and gift of all the necessities of life, for this alone we should all be, at least acknowledge and be exceedingly grateful. So what we call nature comprises not only the biosphere, or the ecosystem, the ecology of the earth itself, with its 4 kingdoms, but includes the whole of the visible and invisible universe. Theosophy teaches the existence of various principles involved in nature or behind nature. For example, macrocosm and microcosm, Prakriti, the Logos, Mahat, Parashakti, Pantheism, planetary rulers, Anima Mundi, or the astral light, the elements and the elemental kingdoms. These are all aspects of the wider metaphysical nature, and the secret doctrine refers to these principles and concepts as the occult veil of nature, nature in abscondito, or hidden or secret nature. So the nature we can perceive, the phenomenal world, is really only the surface of a vastly greater and profound and deeper reality, comprising all of these principles. Septennial nature is said to proceed in cycles of a septenary evolution. The spiritual or divine, the psychic or semi-divine, the intellectual, the desire nature, or instinctual and sensual, the semi-corporeal, and the purely material or physical natures. And we see all of these aspects in the septenary constitution of man. All these evolve and progress psychically, passing from one into another in a double centrifugal and centripetal way. One in the ultimate essence, 7 in their aspects. It is the same for the universe, which manifests periodically for the purposes of the collective progress of the countless lives, the outbreathings of the one life. And we could just note here that the word spirit which derives from the Latin spirare, to breathe, with respiration, inspiration, and so on. It's the Latin word to breathe. So here we speak of the outbreathings of the one life. Through this process of ever becoming, every cosmic atom in this infinite universe passes from the formless to the semi-manifested, from the intangible or the ethereal down to matter in full generation, fully concretized or crystallized, and then back again, in order that each atom may reach, once having reached the human stage, where it becomes acquires the manas principle, this and self-consciousness and free will, through individual merits and efforts, eventually re-becomes one with the one unconditioned all. And of course, nature not only creates and preserves, it also obviously destroys. This is represented or symbolized in the Hindu Trimurti or Trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The three aspects of nature: the creation, preservation, and destruction. Nature clearly, in order, regeneration and revival always take place after a period of destruction. According to karmic law, nature only destroys for karmic reasons or in order to restore harmony, or the harmony which has been disturbed, as part of the cyclic creation. On an individual human level, we are warned by the Buddha in the Dhammapada that he who lives pursuing pleasures, his senses unrestrained, immoderate in eating, indolent, devitalized, him verily doth Mara, the god of illusion or delusion, the deluder of mankind, Mara will uproot as a gale a weak tree. Those who break the laws of nature and health become in fact self-destructive. Equally, Mara does not uproot those who practice self-discipline and moderation. And interestingly, the great Napoleon Bonaparte wrote that moderation was the most important virtue and the foundation of morality. And we have often said in our meetings, or commented on the fact that the collective negative thought patterns of humanity disturb the intrinsic harmony in nature, specifically through the elemental kingdoms. And this is the real cause of natural disasters. So it's been clearly proven by the famous Japanese professor Dr. Makato in his experiments of thought on water, how thought has a direct effect on water, and how much of the earth, of the world, is filled with water, not to mention the human being who is at least 60% water. Thought is a power, a creative power, but misused or abused is obviously equally destructive. What is humanity's true and ideal relationship with nature, or what should it be? Our four lower principles, the physical, vital, astral, and animal soul, or Kamarupa, are embedded in the kingdoms of nature and are dependent on them for physical survival, for life. And at this stage, we're going to refer to another on-screen image. If you could put the pie chart onto the screen. Now, this is taken from an online survey by an NGO called Team for Nature, and they ask the specific question, why is nature so important to human beings? And out of thousands of replies to this question, they analyzed 200 specimen answers, and they collated the main themes or ideas and placed them into this pie chart. Now, one of the replies, which I found quite impressive and quite cogent, was this. It said, because nature is the truth, human beings can be false. So I thought that was quite a direct and quite a pregnant statement. Because nature is the truth, human beings can be false. So could I ask for a volunteer to read the results from the pie chart, starting from the center and going anti-clockwise from the top around the circle. I hope everybody can see the pie chart clearly on their screen. Don't be shy.
I can if you want.
All right, yes, yes.
Can you hear me well?
That's better, yes.
Why is nature so important to human beings? Human happiness, health and well-being, the natural world, food, water, air, etc. Social interaction, learn from the rest of the nature, beauty and fascination, part of a greater bit, of a greater thing, sensory stimulation, best things are free, connection and belonging, escape, balance and security, grounding and perspective, and peace and calm.
Thank you. Now, some of you may think that these are very basic things, very mundane things, but the question is, we are largely unaware or even unconscious of these basic things until we actually contemplate on the subject. And this is only, let's say, the mundane level. Never mind the deeper spiritual aspect to nature, the higher aspects. And yet even an appreciation of these benefits forms part of the process of developing empathy with nature and the natural world. Because we have to begin somewhere in developing a relationship with nature, with the natural world. And what better place to start, of course, than with the mundane, the everyday. Everyone can relate to these things. Right, so what of man's occult and ethical connection to greater and higher nature? And now we're going to go to a famous quote from Shakespeare's play Hamlet. And if that could come onto the screen now, I would ask for another volunteer who is confident reading Shakespeare in your best actor's voice. Could you please read this quotation from Hamlet?
What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason! How infinite in faculty! In form and moving, how express and admirable! In action, how like an angel! In apprehension, how like a god! The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust?
Thank you. So here in this incredible speech, monologue, we have a description of man's dual nature, a being who is both God and animal in the same being, with the human soul or manas in between, in the middle, with the godlike potential, even rivaling or outdoing the angels, the paragon of animals, in other words, the nature's greatest creation, certainly on this planet. Some might argue that. The prime product of nature itself, and yet he has the potential of both the higher planes or sinking down into the lower levels, to the animalistic. With all of this, all of these great gifts of nature, of evolution, of course, comes a great responsibility. Man occupies the unique midpoint between the three lower kingdoms and the three higher, possessing those faculties of mind, self-consciousness, and possessing also a moral sensibility, which only he possesses, the ability to discern good from evil. But man must fulfill his true role and purpose and duty, we could say, as was mentioned in the talk from the Native American spokesman, Oren Lyons, just as they perceive themselves as the guardians and stewards of this part of the creation. And also in this regard, the Hopi Indians of Arizona in the United States say that their Great Spirit has designated them or delegated them the work, the duty of becoming guardians of the planet, of its nature, and we could well model ourselves on their example, as well as the other Native American groups who have taken on this mantle. And interestingly, I think in about 2015, a large group of these Native American spokesmen, prophets, what have you, came from all over the Americas, North and South, Central America, and they attended a meeting at the United Nations in New York, and graphically presented the case for addressing the environmental degradation of the planet and the need to address it globally and in a fundamental way. So, as we read earlier or heard from the reading in The Voice of the Silence, we are urged to become co-workers and co-creators with nature, just as these Native American groups are doing. When this happens, then nature will reveal her secrets, but only to the eye of spirit, to those who are ready, worthy, and deserving. So it's not, which obviously involves a study with nature, a tuning into the natural world, the natural kingdom, observing, contemplating, and developing an empathy with all life, all living things, the animals, the forests, the fields, the waterfalls, the rivers, because if we have the duty to act as stewards and guardians of all of these kingdoms, then we need to be aware of them and of their importance and how they work, how they operate, how they fit into this remarkable framework of interdependence and interrelation, this extremely complicated and sophisticated ecosystem, which we have begun to rediscover in recent decades. So, but from another point of view, again, as hinted at in the reading, human beings working in harmony and partnership with nature can create greater and more beautiful things than either can working on their own. Now, if we use the analogy of the potter, the potter's wheel, the potter molds and forms the raw material, the clay, which is provided by nature, into a form which follows the idea he has in his mind, in his imagination, the idea of a pot, for example. And later on he uses the element of fire to fire and solidify the clay. So he is drawing on what nature has provided, but through his mind, his capacity to imagine and create, he is creating something which you will not find in nature. So you have a synthesis here, and of course other examples can be pointed to, for example, not least of all the sublime architecture of the temple architecture from the ancient world, man molding and forming raw stone from the earth to create the most beautiful structures and buildings ever created, creating beautiful gardens out of wilderness, fruits and flowers, for example, by crossbreeding of species and so on. That is how, in fact, the rose and the apple were both perfected into their current forms from wild origins, and not least of all in the arts. Many of the arts, including music, poetry, song, painting, were inspired by contact with nature, by tuning into nature and observing nature's beauty and power. And there's a saying that art is the imitation of nature or of life. But man, of course, needs nature fundamentally, physically, psychically, spiritually. But from another point of view, we could say that nature also needs man as much as he needs nature. Now, is this a paradox, a contradiction? There is a quote from the Gospels, from the Romans, from St. Paul. The whole of nature is groaning in travail, awaiting the true sons of God. Now, what does that mean? It means that in some respect, nature is not complete unless man himself, who is a child of nature, we could say, assumes his true role, his true destiny as guardian and protector, defender, co-worker and co-creator with nature. And she is groaning in travail, and the metaphor is drawn from the woman in labor, going through the labor pains just before the birth. And it's been a long process up to this point, but it's not complete. The true sons of God refer to enlightened humanity, you could say, those led by the Spirit. Enlightened, mature, responsible humanity or human beings. Now, this we could say appears to be connected to the pronouncement we had in the reading. The idea of nature as a teacher, but also as a parent, and guardian and protector herself of man. That nature will, at the right time, in the right way, in the right place, reveal her secrets to man through the eye of the soul, only through the eye of the soul, and to the human being who has developed this empathy and this attunement, deeper attunement or spiritual, spiritual bond within a nature. With the until then, these secrets are a closed book. And speaking of book, we could say the great Paracelsus, the 16th century alchemist and physician, spoke of the book of nature and the need to rake over its leaves or pages in order to discover her secrets. And there's a quote from the SD, "Some few whose lamps shone brighter have been led from cause to nature's secret head, and found that one first principle must be." And it's true to say, actually, that many human inventions, apart from also works of art, great works of art, have been, as I said, inspired by nature or imitations of nature. So, whether consciously or unconsciously, nature does act as our teacher and our guide. But there is much, much more, obviously, to be learned. There have been whole lines of mystics throughout history, holy men and philosophers, who have gained enlightenment through cultivating a deeper attunement, perception of, and empathy with the natural world. For example, the great Francis of Assisi, who developed a great rapport and relationship with the animal kingdom, particularly the birds. Paracelsus himself, who had a deep insight into both the mineral and the plant kingdoms and their potencies and properties, particularly in regard to medicine and healing. And there is a saying that for every star in the sky or every planet in the heavens, there is a herb on the earth. And so there's a correspondence between the universe, the cosmos, and the plant kingdom. This is the science really behind things like homeopathy, herbal treatments. Many medicines have been drawn from plants, and they say, for example, the Amazon, there are still thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of species of plants still undiscovered, probably animals as well, which could be of major use to humanity, in curing diseases and so on. So other examples were the great Ralph Waldo Emerson. Could call him a peripatetic philosopher. Much of his writing and his poetry was directly inspired by his empathy and his love of the natural environment, the woods and the meadows around in New England where he lived. But of course there were many, many more. By cutting ourselves off from nature, by the way we live, particularly in the cities, which we live a kind of very artificial existence. Many of us don't even realize, know where our food is produced, where it's grown, where does it come from. This is fundamental stuff that we should at least be aware of these things. If we cut ourselves off from nature and the natural world, we separate ourselves from the universal harmony. And by struggling against the laws of nature, we will not acquire freedom and power. This will only happen when we learn to vibrate in harmony with the universe. Then we will be able to hear the symphony of all nature, in which everything resonates in harmony. And it said the angels are able to hear the music of the spheres, but not man, because his physical body, his vesture of clay, his muddy vesture or vehicle, acts as a barrier. But with the right practices and inner development, that can be overcome. But we can learn to resonate in harmony with nature, following the laws of nature, and the universe, which is greater nature. We will be able to hear and perceive this music of the spheres, which includes all the forests, the rivers, the stars. But we must, this process must start must include our entire being, physically, mentally, psychically and spiritually, by unremitting and profound inner work. And a quote from the SD says that man ought to be ever striving to help the divine evolution of ideas by becoming, to the best of his ability, a co-worker with nature in the cyclic task. Now, in fact, that is a kind of paraphrase or summing up of the quote from the Voice of the Silence. The same idea. But perhaps the most important lesson we can learn from nature is the law of unity, or in particular of the diversity in unity. which in fact is the law of nature. It is a law of balance, harmony, of order, and interdependence. And we see this in operation actually in all the natural systems on an unimaginable, almost unimaginable scale. It is estimated conservatively that there are 8.7 million species alone on the Earth. Probably at least a million, 1.3 million more. And yet, all of these species, and of course this doesn't include the actual populations of each species, which account for billions, all of this operates, is self-ordered, self-regulating, in a remarkable way, almost automatically. And not least of all, we see all this happening in our own bodies, in our own system, physical system. The whole, as its parts, are self-regulating and ordering, just as is the microcosm of the human body. From another point of view, of course, nature is one vast alchemical and chemical and electromagnetic system. Of course, we know that behind this order, or this order is intelligently designed and guided by higher forces, namely the angelic hierarchies, following the divine plan of the Logos, instructing and guiding the elementals, the workers behind phenomenal nature, traditionally known as the fairy kingdom. And different hierarchies have different responsibilities, of course. Some care for the lower kingdoms of nature. Other hierarchies are concerned with human evolution. And briefly, I touched on the concept of the planetary spirit briefly earlier. And of course, the Earth has a planetary spirit, a ruler or governor, as does every planet, every system, every star. Our Earth has a hierarchy of terrestrial planetary spirits, from the highest to the lowest plane. They are connected with the archangels and with the 7 highest hierarchies. The planetary spirits have all actually passed through the human stage of evolution on this or other planetary systems. But it probably would be true to say now that the planetary spirit of the Earth is under enormous stress at this time, as well as all of the elemental kingdoms, from, I'm sure you understand, from who. So I think I'll stop there and take your questions or comments. I saw quite a few in the chat box. Yes.
Did you want to share the second video or not?
I think I will save that for the very end. Thanks.
Okay.
We seem to have we have enough time for everything.
So there are a few questions or discussions in the chat box.
Do you want to pick a selection? Or?
Yep. So I'm just scrolling back up. So there was a discussion that following a question asked about. He said, "Is there a way to act as stewards of nature without any sense of egotism?" because it seems historically where this has been attempted, there has only been self-righteousness.
Yes, I think there definitely is a way, and I think it involves very much the heart aspect, developing love of beauty, the beauty in nature, for example. The particularly spring or even the autumn. Every season has its charms. We speak of golden autumn, which we're experiencing now in the northern hemisphere. It is one of my favorite time of the year. And of course, we can tune in to the natural beauty anywhere, even in the cities. It can be found. There are gardens or nature reserves, and we don't need to go far to find it. And yes, even acknowledgement of this in some way, just simple thank you, or it's a basic thing. It doesn't need to involve any ego or selfishness. I think that comes at once we speak of human organizations, and then the danger of human flaws starts to creep in, of the ego. But I mean, even children have a kind of unconscious appreciation of nature. They love it. I mean, wherever you see them, they love being in the outdoors. And I think in a way we know that we know it instinctively. That we need nature. We need the energies, the soul food. You could say the soul nourishment that it provides. As in the pie chart, we had something along those lines, that it gives us a kind of psychic or mental nourishment that we don't get from our man-made things, or we cannot get purely from that. I mean, put simply, it's just acknowledgement, even a simple acknowledgement for the abundance we enjoy. I mean, the concept of Thanksgiving was mentioned, which they celebrate in North America, but I think is a festival. We should make an international one, and they do that. Officially they have a holiday, and they acknowledge that aspect of nature, of providence. Could call it providence. And traditionally in Britain or the Christian countries, they have harvest festivals at this time of year, where the first fruits of the harvest were brought into the church and offered on the altar to God, and then later on a celebration would take place, and even things like that. I mean, this is traditional, but we seem to have lost a lot of tradition. But we need to sort of realign our relationship with nature, but in a as I said, along the lines of guardians and protectors, and of course children now know much more about ecology and environment, pollution, and so on. They are much more aware than they were in previous generations. So and what's the next?
So we've got a couple of comments which actually answer to each other, which I think are worth sharing. So there's one where she said, "We are nature. If we turn against nature, we turn against ourselves. Indigenous people know this, as they've been relying on this relationship for their survival for thousands of years. It's only recently that things have been turned upside down. And then to this replied, and he said, to my mind, what you are saying is exactly the problem. Most folks, in inadvertently practicing the heresy of separateness, do not see themselves as nature.
Do not even what?
Do not see themselves as nature. And I think
Yes,
that might be part of the problem. Yeah.
that's very well put. This disconnection from the natural world, from our own roots, from our own, parentage and background. We cannot live without nature, or we wouldn't survive very long. You see, it said actually the electromagnetic sphere of the Earth itself generates an aura, which is essential for life. The ancient Chinese believed it was the note of the musical scale F, which is in the middle of the octave. And you see, I mean, that this is fundamental. The another aspect of nature of the planet itself, or the biosphere, is this electromagnetic radiation, which actually kind of creates an atmosphere and an aura around the Earth, which protects it from cosmic radiation and is able to deflect meteors and comets, cosmic debris. So we we are really so dependent on nature itself as this it's almost a perfect biosphere or ecological system. It's so perfectly attuned and tuned. The harmony can be easily disturbed, particularly, as we know, by any kind of abuse of the kingdoms of nature, the seas, the oceans, but also abuse of the land itself, the water supplies, rivers, lakes, groundwater. Of course, the big major issue in recent years has been all the wildfires across the world, in both the rainforests and the arboreal forests in the northern hemisphere. What is going on? I mean, it's like nature as a fever, is reacting, like a sick man. I mean, and of course, some, not all, of these fires have been actually deliberately or accidentally started by human beings themselves. So, we really need to get our act together, so to speak, and take full responsibility for every action. We know our thoughts affect nature directly, the elementals, and this is where we can start, really, purifying our thoughts, and keeping a positive state of mind and a positive attitude to all of these aspects of nature: the land, the air, the water, the plant and animal kingdoms.
You mentioned in the talk about the responsibility to the three lower kingdoms, but now you've just mentioned as well the elementals, which are actually, we are told in Theosophy, and another three, or can be subdivided again into another three. How would you call them? Kingdoms, in a way. Do you want to say a word about the importance of the elementals, and how you mentioned about how human thoughts had an impact on that. But can you say something about our responsibility towards their evolution? And actually, that also applies to the other kingdoms.
Absolutely, and we are not only the lower kingdoms react to us, but they're looking to us in a sense for guidance and for direction. And of course the elemental kingdoms relate to the four elements, and they all have their roles to play. They act automatically largely. They are variously describes the nerves of nature, or the spirits of nature. Every culture, every tradition has their different names for them, of course. And traditionally, people were in tune with that plane of that invisible plane of existence, which is not that far away, really. It is the astral plane, which lies behind the visible nature. But fairy tales and myths and legends are also right about them, the devas and so on. And there's a lot, of course, in the theosophical books on the subject. So, but the first thing is obviously to be aware of this plane of existence, the existence of this kingdom, or these kingdoms, and act accordingly, you see. But even if you're not aware of them, if your heart is in the right place, and your head, of course, you will have a beneficial effect on these, well, I won't call them creatures, but they are beings of a sort. Yeah.
So I had written a comment before that Theosophy teaches the correct understanding of the laws of nature. And I don't know whether you can see the vortex diagram, the general scheme of involution and evolution, which Will mentioned. You've got the three lower elemental kingdoms on the left. And then you've got the mineral kingdom. It's the big, thick line running down the center from top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And the vegetable, the animal, and the human kingdom. Now, all those are connected by an intricate series of laws. They're all in constant correspondence with one another, all those kingdoms. And man doesn't see himself very often as being connected to it, but that diagram shows you how as monads, we've come up through all those lower kingdoms.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be here without the existence of these other planes of life and of being.
Yeah. So my question really is what the American elder said in his video that you played at the beginning. That you see, we've become, well, referred to it as capitalism. It's a very materialistic desire for wealth and greed and gold. And he said that the white men had the gold fever, and that now his nation, the Native Americans, were getting the same thing, and they're all wasting their lives in casinos. But my question really is that if we are going to remember these laws of nature again, that wrote about, you see, Theosophy teaches that wisdom. What are the practical steps where we can actually regain control over our minds, and not have them corrupted by advertising or just simple materialism and greed? what types of things does Theosophy, what practical things did Theosophy teach us individually? Because it's got to start with us, hasn't it?
Yes, well, obviously it starts with knowledge, and all the knowledge is there, the wisdom of the ancients, of so many great philosophers and teachers, even just in our own European tradition. So obviously it starts with study, but also contemplation, devotion, and meditation. All these practices are necessary, and all of them together, in order to.
The great thing that throws us off the path and stops our meditation is the failure to be able to resist Mara. Mara is the great tempter.
Yes, yes.
And I think
right.
that's the problem, you see, because someone else in the comments mentioned that we've commoditized things, the nature, the physical nature, and we sell it. But how do you?
But that is a great delusion, is it not? I mean, the crass materialism of the age has led us down the wrong path. And I mean, HPV, used that phrase quite often, even at the end of the 19th century. But I mean, of course, the quote from the Dhammapada is a clear warning about those who live pursuing pleasures and their senses, practicing immoderate in eating, indolent, devitalized, verily doth Mara uproot. You see, I mean, it's quite a stark warning. And actually, we'll have another warning in the last video from another American Indian spokesman. But of course, the fundamental law of nature, the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, and we know it operates. We can see it, observe it on the physical plane, and science has observed, tabulated, many examples of it. But it also operates on every other plane, right up unto the archangels. They are subject to the law of karma. So. And again, if we have an understanding or respect, acknowledgement of that law, and live by it, then it will go a long way to restoring harmony. But of course, as long as it's done without the ego consciousness coming into play, the lower self, the personality, again. But as you say, it's always there. I mean, but it can be transformed. It's only a vehicle. But if we allow it to dominate our lives, then we create problems. But if we aspire to our own higher nature, our spiritual nature, our soul nature, if you will, the buddhi manas, and allow ourselves to be guided by that. I mean, wasn't there the quote from the voice about combining all your senses into one super sense, which lives at the center of your brain? Now, this may or may not refer to the pineal gland, which is at the moment inactive or latent, but could be, when awakened, a source of spiritual enlightenment. So,
you wrote about the Eightfold Path. Does everybody know about the Eightfold Path? It's some part of Buddha's teachings. It comes after the Four Truths. Well, I think actually the Noble Eightfold Path is the fourth truth. But it seems as though we're going through the second truth at the moment, which is the assembling of temptations and suffering.
Yes, the Eightfold Noble Path is an excellent code to live by or to follow. There are different variations on the translation but basically they are each one begins with right thought, right speech, right action, right responsibility. It covers the whole gamut of the human life on the psychological level, pretty much, because as we think, or as a man thinketh, so he becomes. So we have to start with the mind, with the ideas we hold and our aspirations. So we have 5 minutes left. So I would like to go to the final video.
Okay.
This is The Elders Speak. It's part 1, and we'll only have the first 3 minutes. I don't know. Are you able to stop it then? This is a man called Red Crow. He's a Sioux chief or a spokesman.
Time evolves and comes to a place where it renews again. There is first a purification time, then there's renewal time. We are getting very close to this time now. We were told that we would see America come and go. And in a sense, America is dying from within because they forgot the instructions on how to live on Earth. Everything is coming to a time where prophecy and man's inability to live on Earth in a spiritual way will come to a crossroad of great problems. It's the Hopi belief, it's our belief that if you're not spiritually connected to the Earth and understand the spiritual reality of how to live on Earth, it's likely you will not make it. When Columbus came, that began what we term as the First World War. That was the true First World War when Columbus arrived. Because along with him came everybody from Europe.
Can we stop it there? So friends, sorry to end on a note of a warning, of a negative note, but I think it's quite an important point that needed to be made. I mean, it may be a bit controversial, but we live in controversial times. And just to recap what our friend Red Crow said, if man doesn't become spiritually connected to the earth and understand the spiritual reality of how to live on earth, it's likely he will not make it. Humanity, forgot the instructions of how to live on earth, that is, how to follow the laws of nature and of harmony. So he expressed it quite cogently and forcefully there. So
what does he mean by you will not make it?
Well, what do you think he meant by that?
Well,
he said clearly the danger is there that this civilization will collapse. the industrial civilization will collapse through natural disaster, largely climate change, or possibly even war. But later on in the video, he qualified this by saying that ultimately change, even destruction, as I mentioned earlier in the talk, is always followed by regeneration and renewal. And they see destruction as a part of evolution. Of course, birth, death, and regeneration are part of the same cycle. So it's not a completely negative or nihilistic viewpoint. It's merely, I think what he was referring to was perhaps the cycle going round, and the end of one cycle, beginning of a new cycle, or which involves a necessary purging or chastising of humanity, or a way of awakening the level of consciousness of humanity. You see, because we've had decades of warning and about the environment and the we have more knowledge than ever before, but the will is generally still lacking to make the necessary changes to our system. The way we live on Earth, the way we relate to the natural kingdom, the natural world. We forgot the instructions of how to live on Earth. You see. In other words, the how to live in harmony, which the Indians themselves, in their own history, they had to learn a hard lesson themselves. They went through a difficult period 1,000 years ago of internecine warfare and so on. And they had a peacemaker who came and taught them how to live peacefully and harmoniously. So, friends, that's the end of our talk. I hope you gain some insights and some new understanding. So thank you all for your time, attention, and attendance. And I'll hand you back for any further announcements.
Actually, it was our chair.
Hello, are you there?
Good. Yeah, I think we're good. I don't have any further announcements.
Just want to reiterate the next meeting next Sunday.
Okay. Alrighty. So next Sunday we have a meeting, and it is about the origins of optimism and confidence in life by William Quan Judge. It's a study group. Theosophy teaches that humanity possesses infinite perfectibility, and that the Mahatmas, sages, adepts of history are living proof of this. Relying on the law, the wise live in harmony with it.
Yes, so there's definitely cause for hope and optimism. So, okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, friends.
Good night.